Okay, let's dive in. When you close your eyes and picture that classic American hero, what pops up?
Well, for most people, it's probably that iconic figure, right? The lone frontiersman.
Yeah, or maybe the cowboy. Out there alone, totally self-sufficient, rifle over the shoulder.
Squinting at the horizon, destiny in their eyes. It's a really compelling image.
We love that story. It's everywhere.
It really is. It's sort of the foundation myth, isn't it? The rugged individual, the self-made person, pure grit.
But the fascinating thing, looking at the sources we've gathered, is that story. Well, it's mostly fiction.
Almost entirely mythological, yeah. And that's really our mission in this deep dive.
Right. We want to use this material to kind of dismantle that lone hero idea.
Because the reality, when you look closely at history or even modern tech, is that progress, real scale, it doesn't just come from grit.
No, it comes from what we're calling grids and scaffolding, these interconnected systems.
Exactly. And we're going to show you, using examples from, say, 19th century land grabs all the way to today's tech scene, how interdependence, not fierce independence, is what actually drives things forward.
It's this central paradox, isn't it?
It really is. The idea that you could even be off-grid.
Was only possible because of the grid in the first place.
Yeah.
Success is almost never a solo journey.
It's built on layers and layers of stuff we often just don't see or maybe forget to acknowledge.
Okay, so let's start with that first icon. The frontiersman. The ultimate independent guy, right? Built his own cabin, lived off the land.
That's the story. But if we pull back the lens, what was he really plugged into?
A lot, it turns out.
Immense, often government-funded infrastructure. The sources are clear on this.
He wasn't just wandering into empty wilderness.
No. He was usually following roads, maybe canals, boundaries that were surveyed and mapped by the federal government.
And the land itself, he didn't just find it.
He claimed land the U.S. government acquired through huge, expensive efforts. Think treaties like the Louisiana Purchase or land given out by things like the Homestead Act.
So his claim to independence was basically riding on the back of massive collective investment.
Totally dependent on infrastructure, paid for by taxes, built by others, often generations before him.
And his day-to-day supplies, his tools, his ammo.
Right, they weren't just conjured from the forest. His independence was, a logistical fantasy.
That bacon fat probably came on a boat.
Exactly. Packed and shipped from some city way back east, moved along rivers or maybe early railroads.
Paid for with standardized money.
Protected by government forts, underpinned by laws. His life was completely scaffolded by the very society he was supposedly leaving behind.
Okay, let's switch to maybe an even more romantic figure, the American cowboy. The ultimate symbol of freedom.
Yes, the cowboy. Pure self-determination on horseback.
But the sources paint a very different picture. Much harsher and way more dependent.
The reality was the typical cowboy was basically a laborer, a poor one, often.
Seasonal work, right? Low on the economic ladder.
Very low. And owned practically nothing, not the cattle he was driving.
Those belonged to the big ranchers.
Right. Not the land they crossed, which was often leased or, frankly, recently taken.
And often didn't even own the saddle he was sitting in.
Nope, that usually belonged to the outfit, the company.
And who were these cowboys? The image is always the strong, silent white guy.
That's the Hollywood version.
Yeah.
The reality on those 19th century cattle drives was incredibly diverse.
You had Mexican vaqueros.
Absolutely essential. Their skills with horses, ropes, branding, a lot of that was borrowed or appropriated later.
Plus black freedmen after the Civil War.
Seeking opportunity, yeah. And indigenous writers, too. It was a real melting pot of laborers.
So the lone white hero.
That came later, invented by dime novels, then movies, simplifying a really complex collective effort.
And here's the biggest irony, the part history just glosses over.
The whole cattle drive business only existed because of massive public investment.
Completely dependent.
Utterly. That open reign. It was only open because the U.S. Army, funded by taxpayers,
Had forcibly removed the native nations who'd been there for centuries.
And the whole thing only became profitable nationwide because of the railroads.
Which were heavily subsidized by the government. Federal dollars building those lines out west.
Exactly. Those railroads connected the cattle to the big markets back east. Without them, it's just local.
So take away the army clearing the land, take away the railroad subsidies.
And the whole cowboy era economically just collapses. It vanishes.
So being alone out there wasn't freedom.
No, the sources emphasize it was vulnerability, it was poverty, it was being disposable, frankly.
So the big takeaway from this historical part.
The myth celebrates the rugged individual, But the actual engine of growth, especially in the American West, was all about interconnectedness, legal systems, public infrastructure, the grid, and its scaffolding.
Okay, good transition. So if the lone hero isn't the real driver, let's properly define these terms the sources use,
Yeah.
the grid and the scaffolding.
Right. So the grid, as we're using it here, is that visible network, the connections that make complex things work.
The lateral links between people, tools, ideas.
Exactly. Think of historical trade routes, or today, global supply chains, the internet, financial markets. It's what allows large-scale, complex operations.
Okay, so the grid is the network itself. What about the scaffolding? That term feels really key.
It is. Scaffolding is the invisible stuff, the support structure that often gets forgotten but is crucial.
What kind of stuff?
It's the policies, the agreed-upon standards, the legal protections, even shared cultural norms. It's what holds the grid steady while it's being built or scaled up.
Right, because any single part of the grid, one merchant, one company, one wire, is fragile on its own.
Exactly. Together, the grid can handle weight, distribute load, absorb shocks. But
If the scaffolding underneath is weak or missing,
the whole thing can just collapse.
can we have some concrete examples like old tech versus new tech?
Sure. Think 19th century again. Railroads were the grid, the tracks, the physical network.
And the scaffolding was.
Things like standardized rail gauges so trains could run on any track, new processes for making steel reliably, and, crucially, uniform time zones.
Ah, right. You needed that to coordinate trains across vast distances safely.
Absolutely. That coordination, that agreement on standards, that was the scaffolding.
Okay, now new tech. The internet is the obvious grid.
The ultimate grid, connecting billions.
What's the scaffolding holding that monster up?
It's layers deep. There's the physical layer, fiber optic cables, often laid with government help or subsidies.
But also the non-physical stuff.
Yes, the standardized protocols. Things like TCP/IP. That's the basic language every computer agrees to use, regardless of who built it or where.
So any device can talk to any other device. That agreement is the scaffolding.
It's fundamental. Without that shared standard, the internet doesn't exist as we know it. Legal frameworks like intellectual property are also part of it.
And this applies even to the modern heroes, right? The startup founders in their garages.
Oh, absolutely. Their success stories are deeply scaffolded. They're standing on shoulders.
Meaning,
They rely on existing venture capital networks, cloud infrastructure like AWS or Azure.
which itself runs on the pre-existing electrical grid.
Yeah, exactly. They use open source software libraries built by communities over years. They benefit from decades of federally funded research that created the internet, GPS, microchips.
Even the basic legal right to own their invention, patent law, copyright law, that's scaffolding too.
Without it, the incentive structure for innovation just breaks down.
Okay, let's ground this in a historical example. The sources mention the Hanseatic League as a really early successful grid.
Yeah, the Hansa, fascinating case. Basically a medieval platform economy running from the 12th century up to the 17th.
Where was it based? How big was it?
Centered in Lübeck, in Germany, but it grew into this huge federation, almost 200 towns across the Baltic and North Seas.
Wow. But it was an empire, right? No king.
No, that's the key. It was a platform built on trust and shared rules on scaffolding.
What did they actually do to build that trust day to day?
Standardization was huge. They standardized weights and measures. A barrel of herring in Bergen was the same size as one in Novgorod.
That prevents cheating, builds confidence.
Totally. They funded collective security fighting pirates to keep sea lanes safe. They built shared warehouses called contours in key ports.
And negotiated collectively.
Crucially, yes. They negotiated treaties as a bloc, giving them way more clout than any single city could manage alone.
So if you were a merchant in, say, Riga,
You could sail to Bruges, hundreds of miles away, knowing your contract would likely be honored, your goods measured fairly, and you had the backing of the league if things went wrong.
the scaffolding of shared rules and collective defense basically multiply the value for everyone on that trade grid.
Precisely. And the sources also highlight why it eventually faded.
What happened?
Its scaffolding weakened as powerful nation-states like England, Sweden, the Netherlands rose.
They started imposing their own rules, building their own navies.
Exactly. The collective defense part crumbled. The shared standards got challenged. The grid fragmented as the scaffolding dissolved underneath it.
That's a really clear historical echo for today. You think about platforms like Uber or Amazon.
They aren't just selling rides or goods, they're selling a trust infrastructure.
The rating system, the payment processing, the dispute resolution,
Hmm.
that's the scaffolding.
And if that scaffolding fails, if payments aren't secure or ratings are meaningless or there's no recourse for fraud, the whole platform loses its value fast.
Which brings us right up to the present day and what the sources call this great collision.
Yeah, this fundamental mismatch we see everywhere.
On one hand, you have widespread railing against bureaucracy, against taxes, against interdependence,
People wanting that rugged individualist fantasy.
while simultaneously being completely, utterly reliant on incredibly complex, collectively built grids.
Using social media that runs on global servers, navigating with GPS funded by the public, using digital payments, even trading crypto, which needs a massive, stable electricity grid.
It's a deep irony. You want the myth, but you live entirely on the grid.
And this isn't just an academic point, it's a leadership crisis.
How so?
Well, you can't govern effectively or innovate strategically if your basic mental model of how the world works.
Like everyone should just be self-reliant.
It's completely out of sync with the reality of deep interdependence. You end up making policies that weaken the very systems you depend on.
Like trying to run modern software on an ancient operating system, it's just not going to work well.
It's a recipe for fragility, for system breakdown.
And if we zoom out even further, the sources show this pattern across all of civilization, right? This chain of development.
Absolutely. Every major leap forward wasn't a solo effort. It was built on the platform created by the previous stage.
Like agriculture enabling cities,
Cities enabling specialized labor, which eventually led to rating.
writing, preserving knowledge, the printing press spreading it.
The internet distributing it globally, and now AI is accelerating processing that knowledge.
But the key is, none of these leaps happen in isolation. Each one stands on the scaffolding of what came before.
Right. No AI without microchips. No microchips without reliable electricity.
No reliable electricity without complex power grids, managed cities.
No cities without agriculture surpluses. You can trace it all the way back.
And those power grids themselves. Massive collective investment, complex regulations, environmental frameworks.
More scaffolding. It reinforces the same lesson over and over. Collective effort, shared structures, they create the possibility for the next leap.
Okay, so given this reality, how do we make our current grids stronger, more resilient? The sources had a really interesting principle here.
Yes, a very powerful one that cuts right against the individualist myth. Equity multiplies resilience.
Equity multiplies resilience. Explain that. How does spreading things out make the system stronger?
The core idea is pretty straightforward.
Hmm.
The more you distribute capability, intelligence, opportunity, resources, the ability to participate across the entire network, the entire population.
The more adaptive and shock-resistant the whole system becomes.
Exactly. Instead of relying on a few supposed heroes at the top, you activate thousands, maybe millions of potential problem solvers throughout the grid.
That makes intuitive sense. More nodes working on a problem. And there's a real-world example of this.
A powerful one. Finland's recovery after the Cold War ended.
What happened there?
They faced a massive economic shock in the early 90s. The Soviet Union, their biggest trading partner, just collapsed overnight.
Ouch. That must have hurt.
Big time. Unemployment shot up over 20%, GDP plummeted. A crisis moment. Many countries might have panicked, maybe centralized power.
But Finland did something different. They leaned into equity.
They did. They treated equity as a core economic strategy, not just a social nice-to-have.
How did they shift the scaffolding to do that?
They doubled down on long-term investments in universal, high-quality education. Crucially, they focused heavily on broad digital literacy for everyone.
And social safety nets.
Strong ones, yes. The goal wasn't just charity, it was strategic empowerment, enabling every citizen to adapt, retrain, and participate in the new economy that had to emerge.
So schools, companies, local communities, they all became active nodes.
Active, intelligent nodes in a national grid focused on resilience and reinvention.
And the result?
A remarkable transformation. They went from being heavily reliant on forestry and Soviet trade to becoming one of the most digitally advanced societies globally.
That's where Nokia's mobile boom came from.
Partly, yeah. And later, the ecosystem produced talent involved in things like Skype, Angry Birds, Aura Rings, a whole wave of innovation.
And the point is that resilience didn't come from one single leader or sector.
No, it came from activating the potential across the entire grid, supported by deliberate, equity-focused scaffolding. It shows maximizing participation isn't just fair, it's smart economics.
Okay, so this brings us to the practical takeaways for you, the listener. How do you operate effectively in this interconnected world? The sources lay out 6 key principles.
Number 1 is fundamental. Retire the lone hero myth. Just stop building your plans around the idea that one person or one group has all the answers. Progress is collective. Acknowledge it. Design for it.
2. Honor your scaffolding. Recognize the often invisible work, investment, and sacrifice from previous generations that built the platforms you rely on now.
Whether that's internet protocols, the rule of law, public health systems, the power grid, don't take it for granted. Maintain it.
3. Map your grid. You need to understand your dependencies deeply. Where does your data really come from? Your talent? What about ecological resources? Look beyond the obvious.
4. Design for interdependence. Don't try to build walls. Actively build connections and fluency across different domains, different types of expertise. The big opportunities are usually at the intersections.
5. Upgrade literacy. This means getting smarter in 3 specific ways.
Right. Historical literacy, understanding that chain of development. Network literacy, being able to see and map the grids you're part of. And digital literacy, navigating the modern grid effectively.
And finally, number 6, circling back to that core finding.
Equity multiplies resilience. Spreading opportunity, access, and knowledge isn't just social good. It's arguably the single best investment you can make in the long-term health and stability of any system you're involved in.
So the big synthesis here, the main thrust.
We have to flip the script. The grid isn't something to escape. It's your amplifier. It's your multiplier.
And the kind of intelligence we need now, this idea of polyintelligence, is about managing that complexity.
Yeah, it's about orchestrating all these different aligned intelligences, human teams, AI tools, understanding ecological systems, making them work together effectively on the grid.
So we started with the cowboy, the frontiersman, squinting at the horizon.
Yeah.
The real lesson they should have taught us, the one history kind of buried.
Is the one we desperately need today.
Real freedom isn't being cut off from support. It's not the absence of scaffolding.
No, true freedom is belonging to a scaffold that actually holds you up, that empowers you, that helps you grow.
Instead of one that just uses you up or exploits you.
Progress isn't a solo climb to the summit. It's more like a dance, a choreography across generations, connected by shared knowledge, carried forward on these vast networks. It's never, ever done alone.